And I'll now call upon CA Roshan Kumar Bajaj for the next technical session.
Thank you, Ayush. Very good afternoon to all the NFRA office bearers, distinguished guests, and the members of ACAE. We have had a series of power-packed sessions and highly insightful and impactful sessions from the learned speakers. As rightly pointed out by Ajit some time back, that post-lunch sessions are difficult to take, but I'm sure that with their wisdom and energy, the learned speakers will enlighten each one of us who is present in this hall. With us, we have CA Vidhyadhar Kulkarni ji, Principal Consultant NFRA, and CMA Anjan Ganguly, Manager NFRA, who will be taking us through the nuances of audit sampling, statistical tables, and global best practices. When it comes to audit sampling, it is the most used but at the same time most underrated procedure in an audit journey. Not in terms of relevance, but in terms of awareness on how to do it. What should be the sample set size? How to draw samples? There is not much uniformity on how we do this as of now. Also, in this era of AI and RPA, it is being claimed that 100% population may be tested for all the necessary attributes. Considering this a reality, will sampling still remain relevant? That is a big question. With this, I would request both the learned speakers to address the gathering. Over to you, sirs. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. So, in this session, post-lunch session, it is as you all know, it is sometimes difficult to keep you sort of your attention alive. But we'll try to actually disturb you with some statistical tables, etc. But the thing is, our intention is not to make you an expert statistician. I believe in Kolkata also there is a Institute of Statisticians which is very famous. And our intention is not to actually compete with them. But as chartered accountants in the audit process, we are expected to actually have some reasonable knowledge of the statistics. I'm sure I agree with Mr. Banerjee at Mukherjee will agree with me that when we were studying earlier, we used to actually read this book of statistical methods by Dr. S.P. Gupta and mathematics and business mathematics and statistics by Sancheti and Kapoor. But nowadays students, I don't think in the CA they study that. But at the same time, we need to have some good understanding of that. And we'll explain you in this session how this statistical, the tables, etc., will be helpful for us in actually applying this, as you saw in the inaugural session, chairperson mentioned about the one real challenge that what is reasonable assurance, there where the 90% confidence level, 95%, etc. How to practically bring in. That you will be able to see this in this session. And earlier, the audit strategy, this one also, Nilanjan mentioned about the, risk levels, etc. And then Ajit mentioned about the ROMM, high, moderate level risk, etc. How they will be captured actually when you actually design your audit procedures and do that. So this session is going to be, this topic we'll use that, and subsequent topic also Arun will actually talk about what Nilanjan mentioned about this performance materiality, overall materiality, how they are actually getting used, applied. So this session, my colleague Anjan and will take you through that. And now in the beginning, Anjan will take you through, first part of the audit sampling, which is basically on the test of controls and what kind of a sample sizes and approach one should follow. And subsequently then we'll come to the another kind of a test which we do. Can anybody say what is the second kind of a test we do? Test of details. Yeah, it's substantive test. Test of detail, transaction testing, analytical review procedure, various those are excellent. So now I'll request Anjan to take us through this first part of it.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. So I thank NFRA and ACAE for hosting this event today. on this special day at Calcutta. Can anyone tell why today is special? What is special about 21st February? Yeah, yeah, very rightly said. It's am I audible? Yeah. So it is the local language, mother language day that is celebrated, and so it is a coincidence that we're having the event over here, because this whole mother language day, emphasis of mother language started from this part of undivided India. So thank you NFRA and ACAE. So in the morning, we had sessions starting from chairperson's address, then now members' address. First, we had a discussion on the planning side of the audit, like how to make the strategy document by Anil Anjan. And then we had Ajit Vishwanath talk about how you determine the risk of material misstatement at assertion level, at the financial statement level. So those were part of the planning stage and very important stages. And in the later part, we have our senior officer from NFRA will talk about the concluding stages of audit, the misstatements and summary of audit differences. So now this part will be talking about basically execution stage. And in execution, specifically samples, and in samples, specifically how to determine the sample sizes. I think just before lunch, someone had a question, can we have a size on the number of items to be tested for test of controls? So we'll try to answer those questions. So before that, I'd just like to tell you that now today everything a lot of things is IT driven. So is sampling still relevant? I mean, a question may come, if everything is so IT driven controls, do we need to draw samples to test them? So there's a thematic paper by our UK regulator, FRC, and they had conducted a thematic study of the large audit firms who have under them a lot of IT-driven companies who have good IT environment. And they have come out to the conclusion, yes, sampling is still relevant when the audit data of those companies is not sufficiently high to be used in data analytics. Like, you cannot just put the data and get the results. So, and sampling, they say that still relevant where the company gives you a lot of information, the information produced by entities IPE, like you have this receivables aging report, physical verification report, and other sort of reports a company gives. So in those situations, and to test the controls also, sampling is important. Yeah. But sampling is basically important because when you are auditing the mid to large size company, you cannot go about testing all the 100% of the things. So sampling becomes relevant from that point that you pick up the samples, and based on testing of those samples, you want to have a reasonable assurance. Can anyone tell which standard talks about reasonable assurance? And any other standard? SA 200, I think it talks. Yeah. So in order to draw the reasonable assurance about the population, it is free from material misstatement, sampling becomes important. But what we'll be talking about today, how to determine the sample sizes, both for test of controls and later for substantive tests. The SA 530 or ISA 530 does not give sufficient guide. I mean, what should be the number of items to be tested. So we had looked upon some international papers, and there is one paper by the American Institute of Public Accountants, and they have come out with a sampling guide which gives a quantitative terms how many samples to be tested. Yeah, so these are so there's also PCOB finding inspections. If you see why sampling is still relevant, PCOB in its inspection reports from 2018 onwards have allowed in their comments in and around samples, it forms around 9% of their total comments. And an example is on your screen, like the sample size selected for testing revenue was too small to provide SAE due to deficiency in the control testing environment. So sampling still relevant both India and internationally also. This is basically SA 530 and what are basically its components. We'll be covering the sample size is part of it, and the rest of the things, the last two items will be touched upon by Arun sir in his presentation. Basically, sampling, you have two parts. One is attribute sampling, that is basically to test the attributed traits and used to have a reasonable assurance of the effectiveness of the controls, basically the test of controls. And you have that variable sampling, monetary MUS sampling, that is basically to test whether the amounts that are recorded in the books or financial statements, are those appropriate or not. So that is basically for substantive testing.
What here the important thing to differentiate is, this attribute sampling is used primarily for the test of controls. And in fact, in some of the firms, large firms, this test of controls are called test of key attributes, the key controls which are testing. And then the other part, they basically what it does is, it is trying to actually test whether the controls are functioning, whether the design of the control system is good enough, and whether the controls are operating effectively or not. So this is where Vivekji was asking about in the internal control or financial reporting audit when we do issue certificate. And some of the sample sizes which you test here and do the testing will be relevant for the purpose of the general purpose this audit also, as well as for the ICFR testing also. And the second one is variable testing, is basically you are trying to test whether the amounts, whether the revenue or the other account balances which are there, is there any misstatement in that? So for that it is called variable sampling, and some of you must have heard these terms like monetary unit sampling, PPS sampling, etc. Of course, the subsequent slides which Anjan will show you, how the sample sizes, what is the basis for that? He will explain that. For attribute sampling, it is primarily derived from this binomial distribution model. The AICPA, when they developed this, they used that. And for the variable sampling, it is based on the Poisson distribution formula which they used. And some of you who have studied statistics, you will understand that. And one differentiation you need to make is, these are used for the samples purposes in other industries also, other than the auditing, like a healthcare industry. They also do, before they come out with medicines, etc., they do some sample test, etc. But the formulas they use for that purpose is quite different from the formula which is relevant for the audit purposes. So that differentiation is there. So of course, today we are not going to take you through that formula and make you experts in that formulas, but we are going to give you a source that there is a already ready source available for you, and without even using some sophisticated IT systems, in the manual environment also you should be able to these tables and apply that those in your audits.
Yeah, like sir rightly said, our objective is not to make you understand how those numbers are being derived, but rather how you can use those numbers for your audit. I think this is from SA 315, the different assertions to test during the transaction period for the transaction for the account balances and presentation disclosure. I think this was already covered by Ajit sir in his presentation. So, but before, I just want to ask you a question. Can anyone tell me that do we have any sort of numbers given in any of the ICI study material or anywhere that how many samples to be tested? Anywhere you have seen any quantified numbers given? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, 25. Yeah. So this is taken from that ICFR guidance, and they have like different frequencies. Like for annual, you test one, quarterly, one for the year end, one for the quarter, monthly, weekly, daily, and recurring. You have 25, as you rightly said, and they have categorized in two brackets. If the ROMM is assessed to be low or lower or higher. But do you think this guide is sufficient for audit in India? Can anyone say why is it not, if you think so? Yeah. Yeah, very comprehensive in one line, very rightly said. There are 2-3 other factors we can just. So the ICFR guidance just talks about 2 categories of risk, lower and higher. What about moderate risk? What about you have significant risk? So it does not addresses those things. Again, what about if the auditor expects some deviations? Is that thing factored in? No. How much of the deviation he can tolerate? Is that factored in? No. And someone can ask, why 25, why not 26, why 40, not 39? So no statistical basis for these things. So that's why we thought it's pertinent to share the international best practices available with you. Yeah, so going back to that same FRC thematic study I referred, in that thematic study, FRC has said, it's a very recent study, 2023 November, they said that the sampling, the guide given by AICPA is the most common thing used for statistical and non-statistical sampling by audit firms. Even though though the thematic study talks about neither SA 530 or the ISA UK 530 gives any guidance about the number of items to be tested. So the thematic study refers to that AICPA table only. So this is a table, and don't get scared like Kulkarni sir said by seeing the table. Just very simple table. So here is a case. There are 3 variables you need to consider. But before that, a question may come that what should be the sample size? Should it be same for 10,000 population or 1 million population? So can anyone say? I mean, would it be same? I mean, is that thing factored in?
In his thought, he is asking if the number of, say, you are checking the controls for the revenue, sales. If there are 10,000 invoices, and take another situation, there are 5,000 invoices. Should the sample size change just based on the population size?
Any other view? Maybe the opposing view won't change. And why? And why would it change, sir? Because the population increases, you are saying the sample. Okay. So since anyone is not saying, so I'd like to say for the controls testing, population size won't be a factor. For the substantive part, it will definitely be a variable affecting the number of items to be tested. So the answer in one line for control testing, the population size does not matter. 3 variables are important. Your confidence level, how much confidence you want to achieve, very high level, 95% confidence level, or when you're relying substantially on the controls. Or you may have a situation where there are compensating controls and you do plan to rely on substantive tests also. So you can go about, say, okay, I'll be comfortable with the 90% confidence also. So one is confidence level.
I'll just bring in one differentiation here. See, this confidence level thing is decided at 2 levels. One is at the audit level, engagement level it is called, at the audit level. There, for a listed entity or a public interest entity, when you're doing it, the norm is generally the 95% confidence level. 5% of, the complement of that is 5% risk of error you can accept. But if you're doing some unlisted entity or a private entity's audit, again giving a reasonable assurance, but you can accept a higher risk of error audit risk. So there you can lower the confidence level to the 90%. And this 95% overall, when you do it at engagement level, but when you do this test of controls, there may be different kind of, within that also different test of controls and substantive test. There, depending on which one gives you a much better evidence and which you want to rely heavily on that, there you will try to have higher level of confidence. This is called the confidence level at the test level, 95%. And in addition, some cases you can even go down up to 50% level. You will be able to see in the subsequent slides also, where you will be able to go down to that 50% confidence level also. So basically what I was trying to tell you is that confidence levels are set at engagement level, that's the audit level overall, and also at the different test kind of levels also.
So, it's talking about 3 variables are important to determine the sample size. One is the confidence levels I talked about. One is the expected deviations based on your previous year's audit or other experiences, how much error you expect to be there, and how much would you tolerate, a tolerable deviation rate. So, these 3 things are important. Can anyone tell, I mean, do we see this tolerable deviation in any form in the audit file or audit working paper? Is it anywhere quantified? Like, don't just go about the table. Generally, how much I can tolerate. There is at the very beginning of the audit, we start doing something which is related to this tolerable level of deviation we are ready to accept. Very rightly, sir said, defining materiality. So once the amount involved is below the performance materiality, I might not like to go very deep into it because it is within the tolerable range. So I'll just take you through the table. With a 95% confidence level, say you expect a deviation starting with 0. You don't expect any deviation. And you can tolerate at the max 5% deviation. So the column gives you the number of items to be tested. Sample sizes.
Table visible to people at the back? Yeah. So basically this sample size, this table is showing you, depending on your tolerable deviation rates. How do you do it? This is where you need to use your judgments. See, many Indian auditors, we keep saying, is my judgment. But my judgment is not to maintain work papers or not. That's not the judgment. That is where you are using your judgment. The judgment is tolerable deviation rate. How do you do it? Based on your past experience. You must have done your previous audits. You know that there have been some deviations in the past. You can use that, and whether the controls have been corrected by the entity. Is there a change? And somebody might ask me another question. No, I am the first year. This is my first year audit. How will you do it? How do I know? Can anybody give me an answer?
A very simple way of thinking. How do you do?
Yeah.
You ask the previous year auditor, you communicate with them,
Yeah.
and there's also nothing that bars you from reviewing their work paper. I think there is no such guidelines that bars you. So if you think for determining the sample sizes, you need to review the work paper, you can also request that.
Yeah.
So coming back to the table, so
What Anjan is trying to say is, this, I have no right to review the audit work papers. That is not actually what you can say is a complete bar on that. And this is where you need to have access to the audit work paper of the previous auditor also, if required. And if you see our schedule, the clauses, etc., it says that if the client agrees with that, then you should have, you can give access to the other auditors also. So that is why when you're accepting the new audit, etc., you make sure that you have in your engagement letter that the client will agree that give permission to the previous auditor to share his audit work papers also. This is why one of the reasons why NFRA many times we keep saying that you need to have access to the previous auditor's work paper as well, because they, especially in India with this mandatory rotation happening, in banks, etc., 3 years and others 5 years. This is a very, very important thing that we need to have a right to review the work papers. And as I said, legally there is not a complete bar. You still can have access. And using that, you will do this tolerable deviation rate, use your judgment, professional judgment, and do that. And another factor, Anjan?
These are the 3 factors, and in the parenthesis, in the brackets, what is given is the tolerable deviation in exact terms. So, say for the 5% column we are talking about, and you are checking for, if you expect 0% deviation, you will take no deviation as tolerable deviation. But if you are ready to take some sort of deviation, say 0.25 to 1% of deviation, you will check around 93 samples, and if only one error comes, you still get the reasonable assurance, okay, the population is not materially misstated. So this was about it.
Is that clear to you that what is the number mentioned in the brackets? One by one. Lady behind. Huh? Okay. Then we'll see. Yeah, please, madam.
It shows the error. Suppose we do the sample checking and there is an error.
Yeah.
So up to one sample error, it is okay.
Yeah.
Then we need not to, drill down further, do any further sampling.
Yeah. So
For all the 93 items you tested, only one you found error.
Yeah.
You will still have the reasonable assurance the population is not misstated. But again, a professional judgment might come, and you, since there is one error, you can increase your sample size. That is up to you.
Yeah.
So
You like to add
now
something?
you can see the earlier we had only 25 and 40, and people just use that. But if you are going to apply this, like Jaiswal sir mentioned, we should move to the international standards. Then only will become competitive globally. So these are the kind of things we should be able to apply. And this is really truly a risk-based audit. Say, as you see, based on your experience, if there are errors, higher number of errors, the sample sizes increase, that expected deviation rate, because that's where you need to factor in. Last year I had found out 5 errors, then this year the system they have not corrected, then obviously you can't go and say that, no, I'm not going to expect any deviations. You should expect. This is where the NFRA, and when you look at your paper, will question you. So that will tell you that higher number of the sample sizes you will be able to test it. This is where the sample sizes vary. Other persons mentioned about the population size. For test of controls, the population size is the number of the invoices or number of the units over which you exercise the control. Based on that, it is not going to change, but it is going to change based on your tolerable deviation rate and the expected deviation rate.
I think sir also had a question.
Yeah.
Sir. Okay.
Sir, you want-
Yeah, we'll move on. These are like as your expected deviation keeps increasing, the sample sizes also keeps increasing, and similar the number in the parentheses, since your expected deviation rate increase, that also increases. And this table actually is based on assumption of a large population. And for the sake of brevity, they have not shown sample sizes above 2000, but this is based on a large population as mentioned in the last line. This is continuation of the same thing where you have a confidence level of 90%. Same logic applies. You take your expected deviation rate, your tolerable deviation rate, and determine the sample size. Like one thing you can see, if you see the same 5% column, for 90% confidence level, you check lesser number of samples. From 0.25 to 1, you had 93 samples. Here we have 77 samples with same one expected error. So as you reduce your confidence level, maybe as I said earlier, based on the substantive tests you have planned or other controls you are relying, so the sample size you need to test will be lower. In fact, I think in SA 513, one of the appendixes, these are mentioned, the higher confidence you want to achieve, the more you have to test. So that is also inbuilt in our standard. Same continuation of the table. This table is actually of 2017. There is another table, a recent one. I think that is accessible to AICPA members as of now. And there is also a technical guide they have given how these numbers are being derived. So that is also, I think, available to AICPA members. So if anyone is a member, they can study that. Other way, you can also determine these numbers in Excel also. Like we have our colleague in our office, they have determined. For the 0% deviation, it's quite easy. That is not an issue. But for the others, it is a bit technical, so we did not bring in that. But these numbers can also be derived in Excel with all these variables. So you want to add something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, now you go ahead.
Yeah.
Now Anjan will explain you. Yes, these tables are there. Material is there now. How we actually will put it down into your work paper.
Yeah.
No, this is one of
because
the
that is what we're going to check.
Yeah, in our previous workshop, people said that, can you tell us how we should actually document this? Why I have selected this? What is the, what test I have performed? and things like that. So Anjan, quickly take us through that.
Yeah, very
5
quickly,
minutes.
sir. So this is also again not taken from a standard, be it FRC or Indian standard, from the same guidance, sampling guide of AICPA. You can also have a read. I'll just quickly read it for you. You document what is the control you're testing, what are the objectives of it, the definition of the population, the deviation conditions, the acceptable risk, the method you are using, the method of sample selection, the number of items you've selected, a description how the sampling was performed, the evaluation of the sample, and overall conclusion. So this is a model work paper we have designed. And for each of the items, I'll just take you through quickly how you have to document the entire process. Initial basic, Dhanvantri Limited, the name of the company, audit year. Now, this third column is important, the controls you are testing. Basically, we have taken a situation of testing controls around credit sales. So you're checking, you're sort of jotting down what controls are there in the company. You can have an understanding of it through the walkthrough or through discussions with the officers of the company. Like for trade sales, there will be sales officer who generates the sales order based on some purchase order. Then the credit head approves the credit period, signs off the sales order. The warehouse manager, the foreman, generates the lorry receipts, takes acknowledgement from the lorry driver, gives it to the finance team who enters into the ERP system. So these all controls you are testing as part of this sample work paper we're showing you. And the objectives are to test the appropriateness of the designs, whether the controls are designed appropriately, and their operating effectiveness. Now, in a normal situation, the audit starts around December. So you have to decide how many samples you will test during your initial phase in December of month of the year. And again, for the 9 months. And again, at the year and after 12 months, how many items you will test. Population is a credit sales. And to ensure completeness of the population, this is basically more of a substantive part. I think sir will cover it. You can just read it, like tracing delivery challans, trace the sales invoices, all the substantive document, the basis of the sales that has actually happened. So say a total population up to the interim date, up to December. So he is taking from April to November, 3,500 invoices, serial number 1 to 3, 3,500. So based on the same, proportionately for the remaining 4 months, you'll expect half of it. 1,800 and total 5,300 samples. There's a population, 5,300 is a population entire. You also document what are the account balances that are getting affected, the revenue from sales and trade receivables. And these assertions, I think in one of the previous sessions, assertions were talked about. So you test this occurrence, whether it has occurred, the accuracy of it.
And here I want to mention very, very important points, draw you. When you're testing test of controls, no? It is with reference to the assertions. And for example, here you are testing the assertions relating to the occurrence, like fake sales, etc. we're talking about. Basically, look at whether the transaction has happened, is it real transaction? Second one is, what is the amount of that sales recorded, the accuracy, and then classification. The sales जाके purchases में तो debit नहीं किया है उसको, वो तो record नहीं किया. So that is the classification. And some of you might ask that there are other assertions also we showed on that. Where are you testing? There will be separate test for that.
And there will be separate controls and separate similar
separate
documentation for that. And some can be also tested in the substantive part where you perform certain tests. Those actually cover both the things, both the test of controls and the substantive. So those serve as dual purpose tests. You have to define your tolerable deviation rate from then again, the ROMM session it has implications on it, and the circular and the paper we have issued in NFRA on ROMM. You can take help of that and determine whether it is a medium or low level risk or high level risk, and accordingly the rate of deviation will tolerate. Based on your past experience, how much you expect, and as sir had already discussed, if it is a first day of audit, how you should go about it. Confidence level, this 95% we showed based on that. So if you take 95% confidence, if you refer to the table, you'll get a sample size of 46 with a deviation of 1. And since you are doing the audit in 2 parts, you divide it proportionately, 46 and sales up to November, you get 30, and for the remaining 15, you test in the April-May part. The method, you can use fixed sampling method. We have taken fixed interval samplings. So you take the first one randomly, then after that, say there are 3,500 items, and so you divide it by 29. So every 120 to determine 30 items will test. So one you have taken, you divide by 29 the remaining. So you test every 120th invoice. This is just a fixed interval. You can use Excel and generate the random samples you want to test. And once you have taken it, you will just write down or document in a paper what are the invoices you'll be testing.
Yeah, here one of the things why we are giving this presentation is some people actually ask us that I don't have a system, IT system, computer, this one, how do I do it? So this is just to explain, you don't really need very sophisticated IT systems to actually do all that. Sampling method, once you determine the sample size based on the table, you attach this table also to your work paper, and then you have the population size, and you also know that what are the sales numbers, sales invoice, etc., which are there. And simple fixed interval sampling is one of the accepted method, you can use it. Like out of 10,000, if you are going to take, say, 30 samples, 10,000 divided by 30, so every, that whatever number comes fixed interval, you use that, and that is the one you select the sample. And the question comes is, if that sales invoice has been cancelled, what should I do? Then you say that I have a policy that I will take the next invoice. So nothing wrong in that. So you can document and also try to identify what was the reason why that sales invoice was cancelled. And you mentioned this is the approach which I followed. That's your work paper. Anjan, go ahead next.
Yes, once you have tested, determined those things, and I think paper is gone, yeah. Determine the number of samples of the invoices to be tested, and we'll have a work paper over here, like you can document it like this as a model thing, the dates, the lorry receipt number, quantity, amount, and you have the tests that you have performed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The tests are written at the bottom of the table. So each of the tests you perform and you tick. You just don't tick randomly, yes, yes, yes. After actual performance, you only tick. The test from 4 to 7, which I was talking about, it serves dual purpose. It also tests the controls that you had set objective to the objective of testing, and also the substantive part, like checking the lorry receipts or checking whether it has been debited to the correct GL. So it serves as a dual purpose test. Yeah. Once you have performed the test, you see whether the deviations that you had expected at the starting point, is it within that range or it's outside that. So based on that, you can either increase sample size. Even after increasing, you find more deviations. Then you have to set upper limit of the possible error, and then you can think of giving your opinion accordingly in your ICFR report. So you want to add something, sir?
Yeah, this is what we want to say. The earlier slide, go back.
Yeah.
Just 1 minute. Yeah. This is what Jaswal sir was also mentioning, that have the test, what has to be done. Otherwise, many times we find that early olden days we used to write during our articleship time, check 3 months invoices. But what did you check in the invoices? That is now you need to, that test 1, 2, 3. Check sales invoice signed by the sales manager or not. Check sales invoice signed by the credit collection manager or not. And then check whether the quantity agrees with the delivery note, the lorry receipt or this one. And does it agree with the invoice? These are the kind of, tests, and they are not very difficult. Because this is what you should be doing as part of your audit, right? And during your ROMM controls, you have looked at out of 10 controls, these are the controls I'm interested in looking at. And this is all your work paper. Otherwise, many of us, I remember some of the order, if you see, there is one of the audit firm sent us 5,000 sales invoices of the company. These are all that I have checked. What did you check in that? We don't know. It was a sort of a collection of the papers by the entity. So even for these 10 items, unless you find some deviations, etc., you don't have to take the full invoices and all those things. There are many times these invoices contain some confidential information of the clients, He doesn't want to give out the list of to whom he's selling to everybody, because you don't know in your firm who is doing this audit. So this is a simple work paper. You need to document like this. This will evidence you.
Yeah, basically what sir said, and it is more important for small to medium firms, because in big fours you mostly have some sort of the testing that has been performed, but in some of the audit files we have seen the medium to small firms, they think work paper means all the invoices, everything, and send it now, and they also don't even index it. They expect the NFRA to sort of go through 5,000, 10,000 pages and check each invoice and prepare Excel on their own.
Good afternoon. Welcome back. And those people who are outside and interested in ROMM, I request you to come back. The risk has reduced now because we have covered a lot of areas. So, so far earlier, my colleague Anjan talked about test of controls using the statistical tables. Now, the another important type of a test which we do, substantive tests, which are also called the test of details. So for those, how do you determine the sample sizes? And I will also have some, if you are doing a balance confirmation, obtaining balance confirmation, and it's a substantive test, and how do you select the samples for that, and how do you document it? I've got that work paper also. I'll try to do that. But before that, first, let's look at, for selecting the sample sizes for substantive test, what is the starting point? The starting point is basically, you will determine what is the audit risk there. The formula for this audit risk is basically inherent risk multiplied by control risk into analytical procedures if you are doing, and then what is your TD, means how much error you are ready to accept. That is the risk of incorrect acceptance. Uska complement is, say, a confidence level, it is called. And this inherent risk and control risk in the new world now, currently it is actually combined as, can anybody say what has it become now? Inherent risk and control risk together, what is it called? Excellent. Very good. I think we have done justice in the early morning sessions. Yeah. So that's why when I talk about this inherent risk and control risk, now it has become a ROMM. Yeah. So this is a standard formula which will use it. But now what you need to determine here is, using this formula, you have to determine what is the risk of incorrect acceptance, how much you want to actually or want to accept it. And it is not your own judgment, but that your formula, there is a formula that itself will tell you. It is not your entire own whims and fancies. Yeah. So this is the you can say at the substantive test level, if you want to find out what kind of a risk of incorrect acceptances in your situation based on your facts and circumstances, you will be able to arrive at. So basically in the left hand side, if you see RMMM, it means even in case if you have got a risk of material misstatements of 10%, 30%, 50%, 100%. This can be converted into, say, 10% means low risk. Yeah? Then 30% is, say, moderate risk. Like that you can arrive at in the qualitative terms also. And another factor also you look at is, many times some of the areas you will also do analytical procedures, like wages when you are checking at, salaries, revenue also sometimes. That also gives you some comfort, right? Or there could be another compensating substantive test you might be doing. When you are looking at the trade receivables, you have done some transaction testing, and you have also obtained the balance confirmations. Now you are looking at balance confirmation ke liye mujhe kitna karna hai, because you have already done that. So that also you take into there. So does it have a 10% risk, 30% risk, 50 and all that. So using this grid, then you will arrive at, for a particular substantive test, what kind of a TD means risk of incorrect acceptances. And there are some boxes here where it is mentioned that star is there, 0. It means you don't need to do any substantive test there. For example, your risk of material misstatement is only 10%, control risk, okay? And your analytical review procedures risk is also only 10%. It means 90% you will be happy with your this one. Other way what to say is 90% control risk is also good, 90% analytical review procedure also. In that case, you don't need to do any further testing. But at the same time, other end you see, many times your analytical procedure you will not be able to perform. On trade receivable, etc., sometimes you will not be able to do any this one. And control risk also, you assume that controls be both weak hai boss udhar. Then in that case, only 5% risk of incorrect acceptance. It means 95% confidence level you need to have. So these are the factors which will actually determine you. In the subsequent tables, you will see that it will help you actually determine the sample sizes. Of course, here the population size also plays important role. And the second factor is the performance materiality, which were determined. That will play a big role here. So that's why earlier in the session I cautioned you people, those performance materiality, etc., which you determined, they are not just for the paper, they will actually determine the sample sizes. So this is the table, you need to use it. And this is just from that UK paper I mentioned. When you're using AICPA table, it talks in terms of the 10% quantitative terms. But if somebody is using this terms like significant risk, high risk, etc., what do you mean by that? So this is a very useful that audit sampling paper, which I have given this link also. Please read it. Very, very good paper which they have come out with. Now there are 3 options available here when you are going to determine the sample sizes. The option 1 is quite simple. Population size means, say, imagine if you want to do a trade receivable balance confirmation, what is the outstanding balance that point of a time at year end, divided by tolerable error. Can anybody say what is tolerable error? It is actually performance materiality. And in some cases, what the auditors do is, वो performance materiality का lower level लेता है. So that is when the tolerable error or tolerable misstatement it is called. In our firm, when I used to work, we used to call it a tolerable misstatement. So that is the one. And then you also have expected misstatement. Again, based on your past experience, हमें 20% में confirmation नहीं आया, and another 20% में there were some differences. So use that judgment, and do come out with that. And there is a confidence factor, assurance factor which is given. And that table I will show you. Then that will give you a sample size. And option 2 is slightly, little bit a higher version, little bit more statistical thing. Only change they have done is that expected misstatement को उन्होंने further ये कर दिया कि expansion factor further डाल दिया. Expansion factors are basically these confidence factors determined based on that Poisson distribution theory. These are your confidence level. And this is that confidence factor which I mentioned earlier. Say if your risk of incorrect acceptance based on that grid, whether you fall under 5, 10, 15, 20, you see. And then you also ratio of expected to misstatement you calculate, whether 0% hai, 0.05%, etc. hai. And that gives you this confidence factors, 3, 2, 3, 1, like this, etc. One important factor you can see is the higher your appetite for accepting errors, which is possible in some cases, the confidence factor का जो multiplier जो है वो छोटा होते जाता है. Means sample sizes will be lower. And at the same time here, this side if you look at ratio of expected to tolerable misstatement, it keeps on increasing. If you expect more errors as a percent of this, obviously that multiplying factor has to be higher. So this is a table, and a very quick small example. If you look at, you want to determine 125 customers hai, I don't want to send balance confirmation to all of them. I want to determine how many I want to do, and say that 15 lakh rupees outstanding balance hai, and number of debtors 125. Performance materiality, you said that 1 lakh rupees hai. Then expected errors 10,000, that's 0.10%, first column. And risk of incorrect acceptance based on that earlier grid has come to 20% in your case. It is not your just judgment. It automatically comes based on those factors which you put in. Then confidence factor, you refer to that table, it gives you 1.9, 1.89 for this. So the sample size is 32 here in the first column. At the same time, if you change your risk of incorrect acceptance from 20% to 5%, then sample size increases. And in another case, you do not expect any errors, sample sizes again comes down. So if you see that these are the factors actually that Anjan mentioned to you, SA 530 का जो appendix 3 जो है, it actually tells you what is the relationship between the sample size, population, expected rate, and various things. This actually, if you look at these formulas, they actually give you it actually goes in the direction, it proves what they have mentioned there. Yeah? So this is one very simple thing, many of you can use it. Do you need a computer for this? Small firm, etc. You say, मेरे पास नहीं है sir toolkit. आपके पास क्या है? Toolkit का knowledge कोई नहीं बताया. Problem is India में nobody told you this exists. All the materials which were produced were just reproduction of SA 530 or something, right? Of course, if you are doing a very big audit of ONGC, there are not 125, there are 25,000 customers. Yes, you need to invest and you need to get the systems for that. Otherwise, it's simple document. So this is one way of, Another one is using this tables. Tables were very quite simple. And tables may be on the, what it has done is, it has tried to put that formula which I mentioned into these percentages. And based on that, it has given you a different kind of sample sizes. So up to 50% तक वो बता दिया आपको उसको. And now the question is, how do you document it? This is the most important thing which you are all waiting for, right? And again, I'll tell you, our SA 530 doesn't tell you what is the expectation of work papers. What should you document in this one? And the American standard also doesn't tell you, but that AICPA's sampling guide, which is issued, that gives you what all you should be documenting. What is the objective of the test? What is the population definition? Anjan mentioned to you, how do you also ensure accuracy of that population by doing certain tests, etc. So imagine for balance confirmation, if you are using the debtors aging report, which is produced by the company, to ensure that the debtors balances are correct, you should be doing some test on that, right? Some test of controls you should be doing. The earlier session we did, check some of the invoices, etc. on that, right? Using sample. So other factors like the estimated and tolerable misstatement, audit sampling technique, and all that, you need to document. So now, similar kind of a work paper earlier we looked at for the this purpose, for test of controls. You document what is the test you are doing. Is it a balance confirmation test kar rahe ho, inventory evaluation check kar rahe ho, or you are selecting sample for physical verification of inventory. You mentioned those. And which are the significant balances affected? In this case, trade receivables and provisions. Trade receivable balances are outstanding 250 crores. I have assumed for this. And what are the assertions we are testing here? Very important again. You are testing assertion कंफर्मेशन लेने के बाद आपको क्या मिलेगा? अच्छा भाई, डेटर्स आर ओके, द फेलो इज कंफर्मिंग. He is not giving you a guarantee that he will pay you. It is not giving you a ECL confirmation. He is giving you, yes, number correct hai boss, I accept my liability. And then completeness also it achieves. And that ROMM table of Ajit, which document which he showed, there you have assessed medium risk hai, for these assertions. So this medium risk will be used for that grid purpose. And of course, the cutoff ke liye, etc., we are doing a different test. That also you document. What are the other compensating controls you are looking at? And now, next step, what you do is, you actually stratify the balances also for this purpose. You know, any outstanding balance above the performance materiality, I am going to ask for confirmation. Usko nikalo. वो था total outstanding amount is 250 crores, 300 accounts है, and then significant accounts are 45 crores का and 5 accounts. And then also look at sensitive accounts. Are there any receivable from your promoter related countries? Subsidiary छोड़िए, promoter controlled companies भी होते हैं, उनका है क्या? That is the important thing to ask for the confirmation. Or there could be some debtors in the past you have seen that ये एरिया का डेटर्स थोड़ा हाई रिस्क है. दे हैव ऑलवेज कंप्लेंट दैट यू नो सेल्स मैंने बाद में कंपनी हैज रिवर्स द सेल्स एंट्री, दोज वंस. एंड रिमेनिंग 185 करोर्स एंड 289 अकाउंट्स है. 289 का आप सैंपल निकालना है, कौन कौन सा ये करना है. सो देन यूजिंग दिस AICPA guide, you all write what is your overall confidence level, what is the sampling approach you are going to follow. And as Anjan mentioned, the UK guide gives that across the world, this AICPA guide has become a norm for people to use. You can also use it because that is where the guidance available. Yeah. And using that grid which I had mentioned, you arrive at the incorrect acceptance level of 10%. Means 90% confidence आपको चाहिए होगा. Use that, and using that आपका टॉलरेबल मिसस्टेटमेंट का परसेंटेज भी कर दिया आपने कैलकुलेट. ऑल द फैक्टर्स रिक्वायर्ड फॉर द टेबल जो है ना, आपने इसमें कैलकुलेट करो, रीजंस भी लिखो उसको, एंड व्हाई यू आर डूइंग. फॉर एग्जांपल एक्सपेक्टेड रेट के लिए मैंने क्या लिखा है इधर, दिस इज द थर्ड ईयर ऑफ आवर ऑडिट. ड्यूरिंग लास्ट ईयर वी डिड ऑब्जर्व 5 customers सेइंग दैट balances आर नॉट करेक्ट. ओके, एंड ऑल्दो वी लुक्ड दैट द एंटिटी हैज करेक्टेड दैट और नॉट, वो सिस्टम करेक्शंस भी होता है ना, वो भी देखा है. बट स्टिल वी फील दैट देर इज अ पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ 0.2% एरर्स आने का चांस दिस टाइम ऑल्सो. दिस इज हाउ यू एक्चुअली अराइव एट दैट. एंड बेस्ड ऑन दिस ऑल कैलकुलेशंस, नाउ हियर देर इज नो इंटरिम टेस्टिंग एंड फाइनल. नॉर्मली दिस टेस्ट, सब्सटैंटिव टेस्ट, यू डू इट एट द ईयर एंड ओनली. वो टेस्ट ऑफ कंट्रोल में 2 टाइम में होता है, बट ये सब्सटैंटिव टेस्ट में मोस्टली यू विल डू इट एट द ईयर एंड. एंड 35 सैंपल आएगा वो टेबल के हिसाब से. इट मीन्स आउट ऑफ 289 कस्टमर्स यू विल हैव टू टेक दिस वन फॉर 35 सैंपल्स. एंड प्लस यू आर ऑल्सो डिसाइडेड टू डू इंडिविजुअल सिग्निफिकेंट अकाउंट के लिए 5, सेंसिटिव अकाउंट के लिए 6. सो इट मीन्स टोटल आपने 46 कस्टमर को बैलेंस कन्फर्मेशन रिक्वेस्ट भेजने वाले हैं. Now the question is, how do you determine that? So what you do is simple, again fixed interval sampling का निकाल लिए, 185 crores divided by 35. So every 5.29 crores का जो कस्टमर जो आएगा आपका, वो बैलेंस आपको निकालते जाना पड़ेगा. And this is where little bit of a tricky situation, 2-3 situations are there. First thing is to arrange your customers balances in the order of the highest to the lowest. And then you actually start calculating first sample जो है उसका जो each of these customers का what is the cumulative amount of outstanding you determine. And the third column is first sample, Acae you take it random, right? And the next sample etc. what you will do is what was the previous column का cumulative amount and the sampling interval कितना था 5.29. So next sample you should be selecting a customer which falls under 15.29 cumulative bucket में. Like that you go on doing this. If you have got less than 1,000 samples, etc., easy to do it on Excel. And many of our small audits में उतना ही customers रहेंगे आपके. इतना तो इससे ज़्यादा नहीं होगा. You are not doing the MTNL audit or ONGC. Your customer might be higher. So after selecting one or two first samples, sometimes you may need to actually change that frequency of selection. Because क्या होता है exactly many times में आपका जो initial customers जो है ना वही bucket में fall नहीं करता है. You will have to select, leave that particular bucket and take it into the next bucket. This is what happened in this C2. ये C2 के बाद एकदम serious में आ गया 7, but next one I have to take D2, not the the D1, because that D1 customer was not falling in that cumulative bucket for me, right? So this is the way you go on doing the sampling. Other option is you all arrange your customers in that particular order, manual sample selection, the last one which I have given, and just say take it based on the highest to the lowest. First जो भी आएगा 35 customers, you can take that, and that achieves your MUS sampling का monitoring sampling का objective. And the other second option is also, instead of individually looking at the customer, you create clusters. 5 to 6 customers का bucket बना लीजिए amounts का, and this ये जो selection bucket का number जो मैं बताया ना, उसमें वो जो bucket में आएगा, उसमें से if there are 4 customers, you select randomly 1 customer from that, like that. That is also an option you can follow. Yeah. So this is the way you do the stratification of samples. And if you look at the AICPA guide, it gives some good examples of how do you do the stratification also. This is one I've just mentioned here. It is again based on the outstanding amounts. Huh? So that was about the substantive test ka, how to determine the sample sizes. Thank you.
Heartfelt thanks to both the learned speakers. May I request CMA Anjan Ganguly to come up. So being from the audit domain, I hear from people from tax and other verticals. They say that audit is a low-end job and it's not very technical. But whoever has attended today's session, I'm sure they must have realized that it is a highly technical subject. So today's deliberation on audit sampling was in depth and added a significant value to us. We are looking forward to many more such sessions. Now may I request CA Mano Chocharia to felicitate CA Vidhyadhar Kulkarni with the Utrevan memento. May I now request CA Vanika Chaudhary to felicitate CA Vidhyadhar Kulkarni ji with the coffee table book. May I request CA Kamal Moore to felicitate CMA Anjan Ganguly with Utreya. So may I request Amitabh sir to please felicitate Anjan Ganguly ji with Utreya and memento. May I request Amitesh Agarwal to felicitate CMA Anjan Ganguly with coffee table book. Thank you so much, sirs.